Okay guys, so one more practice problem here on banking. This is number 2 from the worksheet that we were using in class. So we have to put our assets into and our liabilities into our T account. So we have 500,000 in deposits. That's generally where I like to start because I know that that has to go on the right side as a liability. It's generally going to be the biggest number that we see here as well. And then we have 100,000 that belongs over in the reserves section. Notice here that it just says reserves. It doesn't tell us yet whether these are required or excess or total. So we're going to kind of assume that's total reserves that stand alone. And then we have 400,000 that are going to exist as our loans. And once we see this balance, 500,000 is 100,000 plus 400,000, we know that we're balanced and we've taken care of all of these numbers from the question. Part B, if the reserve ratio is set to 5%, what is the potential money multiplier? So the money multiplier, MM, equals 1 over the reserve ratio. So in this case, the reserve ratio is 5%, 1 over 0.05. You need a hint on doing these types of fractions. We've got 1 over 5/100ths. And then when we have this, you can just flip this over, is 100 over 5, which is going to be 20. So the potential money multiplier is 20. Second half of this question, if we have a 5% reserve ratio, then it's asking us how much in excess reserves they have. So we need to take the deposits and multiply it by the reserve ratio to figure out the number of required reserves that this bank has to hold. So we take our 500,000, we multiply it by 0.05, and we wind up with $25,000. Sorry, minor brain thought there for a second. If you need help on that one, 10% of 500 is 50. 5% is half of that, so we divide 50 in half and we get $25,000 in required reserves. If they have $25,000 in required reserves, $100,000 in total minus 25,000 in required means that they have $75,000 in excess reserves, right? So they have 100,000 in the top situation that we know they have in reserves. We calculated that they have 25,000 of those are required reserves, which means the other 75,000, 75 and 25 adds up to 100. The other 75,000 has to be excess reserves. So then the last part of the problem is kind of the classic banking question here. How much can the money supply increase if they hold only required reserves? If this bank drops from its total reserves, gets rid of all of its excess, and goes down only to required reserves. So we remember that the change in the money supply is equal to the change in excess reserves times the money multiplier. So we've got a couple of these. We know that they're going to loan out their $75,000 in excess reserves. We know that the money multiplier is 20. So 20 times 75,000 is going to be $1.5 million in potential new money in addition to the money supply. So what we could say here is that the money supply could increase by up to $1.5